case we haven't met, I'm Elizabeth Otters-White, and I'm happy to share this recording of a workshop I conducted recently. It's part of the Standout Professor Confab, and the focus of the workshop is on goal setting. So just a couple of things before we get started. First of all, it's an interactive workshop, so you'll see that we've inserted slides where you can pause the video and then work on the exercises on your own. That's really the way that you're going to get the most out of the workshop. Also, because it was interactive and because we had live participants, and because I want to preserve confidentiality and privacy for those who participated, you'll notice that there are some cuts in the video, and in particular at the end, it sort of ends a bit abruptly. Okay, so that's why. The final thing I want to say is just unfortunately the video quality is not great. So if you're watching it kind of on a small screen like your phone, it should look fine. If you're blowing it up onto a desktop computer monitor, it may not look great. So apologies for that. I hope it doesn't impact your experience of the workshop. And I think that's all. So let's get started. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being you.
I'm happy to be with all of you today, so thank you. Okay, let's dive in. As we do, let's just take like 1 minute to really kind of arrive in the space. A lot of us have lots and lots and lots of other things that we're juggling, not only this week, but today. So whatever helps you to kind of let go of all the other things that you have on your mind, whether that is something practical like putting a phone off to the side or turning off notifications or taking a deep breath, feeling your feet on the floor, like just stretch, whatever helps you to let go of whatever was with you. It sounds good. Whatever was with you before you arrived, so that we are really here. And yeah, I'm just taking a second to do that myself. All right, excellent. So we are going to start with some stream of consciousness writing. So I'm just going to give you 2 minutes. I will time it. 2 minutes to write without censoring or stopping on the question, why do I do the work I do? 2 minutes. And if you get stuck, just write, I do the work I do because. And if you have to keep writing, I do the work I do because, with nothing following it, that's okay. But 2 minutes on why do I do the work I do? Go ahead and start, and I will tell you when time is up. Okay, now what we're going to do is I'm going to give you just a couple minutes to look back over what you wrote and kind of distill it. You know, you might like circle key words, maybe themes kind of were repeated, anything that jumps out. And ideally, I'm not giving us much time for this, so it's going to be kind of a fast and loose. But ideally, we end up with something between like a single word and a sentence that kind of captures the essence of what we each wrote. Okay, so just take a couple minutes for that, and then we'll come back together. How are we doing? Are we kind of converging on a general idea of something, even if it's not, you know, doesn't have to be in the perfect words or anything? It's really what I was hoping to establish here is just a kind of a backdrop, right? Or a foundation for now the more specific kind of work that we're going to get into as we set some goals. So does everybody feel able to continue, move on? Okay. Okay, great. So what I'd like each of us to do is to start by choosing a horizon that we want to focus on today. So it might be, I mean, it could be anything, right? I wouldn't choose something like a week. We're going to, you know, try to look higher level than that, but it might be like the end of the confab, which is a couple months from now. It might be the end of the fall term. It might be the, you know, end of the academic year, whatever feels like a horizon that you'd like to work with today. I want you to get that in mind. And then I invite you to, we're going to do just a quick visualization. So I invite you again to kind of get settled, get grounded. Invite you to close your eyes if you're comfortable. You can turn off your video if you'd like to do that. Um, Whatever you need to do to kind of feel like you can focus inward. And then I invite you to flash forward to the future date that you have chosen. So the end of your selected horizon. And really, let's really put ourselves there. So let's embody that future moment. We are now there. And I want you to imagine that things have gone exactly as you wanted and needed. And I want you to pay attention to how you feel. Nothing else. I don't need details or anything else right now. I just want you to pay attention to how that feels and what you notice. And maybe try to capture that feeling in just a few words. And you can jot those down when you have something, when you have a sense. Okay. And we're going to return to that future state in a few minutes. I do want to take a quick pause and see, is anybody willing to share, either aloud or in chat, a little bit about that feeling that they experienced, whether it's in just a couple words or more? Fulfilled, delighted, confident. Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, I see lots of nods. Relief. Excellent. Thank you. I see a few more here. Human, alive, real. Opposite of stressed and overwhelmed. Then excitement came a lot later. Not going through the motions. Really good. On top, happy, content. Yeah. Yeah. So let's hang on to those feelings because I think they're important and I think they can guide our choices, and there's intelligence there, right, in those feelings. So now I invite you again to kind of close your eyes if that's comfortable. Again, you can turn off video if you'd like to, kind of get back to that future state, embodying that feeling, all of those positive feelings that you all have just described. And I'm going to pose a couple of questions to you, and I'd like you to respond from that place, right? From that state of contentment or excitement, fulfillment. And I want you to sort of do this from looking back, right? From the future date. So I'm just encouraging you to kind of pay attention to any thoughts that come to mind and just jot down anything. It doesn't have to even make sense to you in the moment. So the first thing I want to ask is, how have you been approaching things? So when you're looking back over the time that's passed and here you are, the end of that horizon, feeling all these positive feelings, how have you been approaching things? So imagine yourself at the end of the journey. So for me, let's call it November 1st. So I would imagine here I am, it's November 1st, and I'm looking back from September 6th through November 1st. And what have I done to feel alive, or to feel confident? What has happened? So, how have you been approaching things? I'm going to ask a few more questions. I'll just put them out there and you can kind of let them swirl however they will. What have you prioritized? And what outcomes have you achieved? So, how have you been approaching things? What have you prioritized? And what outcomes have you achieved? I do want to give you just a minute to collect your thoughts from this last stage of the process. If there's anything that you want to jot down, if you want to, again, maybe distill anything into a few key points, if you've maybe identified a couple of big rocks or a couple of priorities, whether that's about the what, the things you need to do, or the how, we're kind of starting with awareness, and then hopefully we can get also down to some action, and an action in particular that you're either mostly or entirely in control of, right? Hopefully that also can help to ease some of that anxiety and stress around how am I going to get there, or how do I get through all the things. I want to give you a couple minutes to just collect that before we move on. So I will be quiet for a moment, allow you to do that. Everybody have sort of some sense, and there's so many forms this can take, but um, something that might resemble at least a couple of priorities or guiding principles, or like I said, big rocks or key projects, or just something that maybe provides a little bit of structure for how you want to think about this horizon. Okay. Seems like you're okay to move on. Okay, so now we're going to do another kind of stream of consciousness, but it's really more a brain dump. And I'll just say up front, this one is a little risky in the sense that I think it can feel liberating and it can feel stressful. So let's see that we have lots of time to process together afterwards. What I would like to invite you to do is to take 2 minutes to just do a brain dump of all the to-dos that are in your head right now. Just do a brain dump and don't cheat. If you have a to-do list, don't cheat yet. You can refer to that later, but for now, just truly rely on everything that's in your head, all the to-dos that are swimming in there, and just get them down on paper or, on your computer. So I'll give you a couple minutes for that. Okay. There might be more that could come. We're going to just start with that. You can always take more time later. And I will say, the way we're going to spend the rest of our time is kind of laying out and starting a process that you almost certainly won't finish here. You can continue it if it feels valuable. I just want to make sure we can kind of lay it out together. So now what I invite you to do is go through that brain dump, or if you have a to-do list that was already created somewhere and you'd rather work from that, that's totally fine. And I want you to ask yourself, and this is going to be for some people, depending on what you came up with from the previous exercise, like the big rocks or, guiding principles, in some cases, this is going to happen really naturally. In other cases, it's going to be a little bit more, trying to see how it fits together. But what I want you to do is go through every item you just wrote down and ask yourself, does this connect to one of my big rocks or not? Okay. In other words, is there some connection between whatever guiding principles or big projects or priorities or however you framed it that connects each of these things? So it's kind of like a yes, no, or if it's unclear, maybe it's an unclear or a maybe, but yes, no, maybe for each of these as you go through. So one of the things that we're not going to have time to do today, and yet I think it's certainly an important piece, is the question as to what do we do with all these things that didn't connect to the big rocks or the priorities, right? And I think we could have an entire session on that topic of, how do we manage those? And are there some that we just say, well, we're not going to do them, right? Or can we get help with them? Can we shrink them? Can we find ways to make them have more meaning, right? As there are other ways to sort of connect them to the things that do matter. What I will ask us to do next is kind of set those aside for a moment, the ones that didn't connect to the big rocks, and I want to focus on the ones that did. And what I'd like us to do now is for anything that is connected to a big rock, I want to ask the question, is this thing that you wrote down a single concrete action? So is it like, email person X to ask whatever, you know? Or is it really a project, which is like revise paper Z, okay, which is like has many, many tasks. So is it a concrete action step or is it a project? If it's a single concrete action, you can either set a target date for completion if you'd like to, write down when you're going to do it, or just move on. Because the ones we probably really need to spend more time with are the ones that are the more nebulous projects, right? And how we're going to figure out how we're going to get those done so that we can have those good feelings that we identified, right, at the end of our horizon. So maybe I'll pause for a minute, let you just go through for anything you said yes on earlier, so connected to Big Rock. Is it a single concrete action? If yes, just put a check or a date, and then we're going to start to go one by one through the what I'll call projects. Okay. If you didn't get through all of them, you have a sense of what to do when you return to this if you choose to. So now let's get to these bigger, like these important, again, I'll use the term projects that are not just single actions. And let's think about at least starting to kind of chunk these out, right? To establish some tangible kind of milestones for making the progress that you want to over your chosen horizon. And this is where we really want to focus in on like things that are within our control, right? Um, so so take whichever, you can take the first one on your list, you can take the one that feels most resonant, most important, whatever you want. Just choose one to work with first. And maybe start at your end of your horizon, right? And where it is you've decided you'd like to be with that. And work backwards or whatever, sort of makes sense to you to establish a couple of milestones or interim goals or ways to track and measure progress that basically allow you to know that you are on track, right? That you are honoring what you have set out to do or the way that you've set out to approach it. It might be more about the how, right? Than exactly what you're accomplishing. But go ahead and see if you can come up with a couple for, whatever first one you want to work with. And then once you have some interim milestones, then we're going to work even down one more layer and then we'll loop back. Does everybody have at least one or two maybe milestones for one important project? Okay. Now, sort of the final step is to take those milestones and to identify your very first step towards that first milestone. So, what is the next small concrete action that you need to take in order to progress toward that milestone? And this is where I think really going small has huge benefits, right? Of not, you can, get early wins, you can feel success, you can build that momentum, as opposed to leaving this exercise with a list of like 10 million next steps that are way too big to ever actually be able to get them accomplished, right? It also provides some easy on-ramps, right? For when you can return, because you might have several things. You probably do have several things that connected to the big, boulders or big rocks. And we can't do everything all at once. We're not going to be able to do everything today. So having something really small and well-defined and concrete that you can do whenever you return to that project, whether it's today or a month from now. And then, I think you get the idea. Then we can continue, right? You can work through this kind of process for each of the important things on your list. Is that making sense how we're kind of going through this? Okay. I'll give you a few minutes to continue working, recognizing that you're not going to get through all of it. And then I want to talk through just a couple more things together, a little bit of strategizing. Okay. Let's come together and just talk a little bit more about how we might approach these things that we've laid out. So, my first question is, what help or support, or I mean, it can even be sort of how you set up your environment. Like, what do you need in order to successfully accomplish what you are beginning to lay out here, right? What do you need to really get to that vision of contentment, whatever positive feelings you experienced at the end of your horizon? I'm going to give you a moment to just think about that on your own. Um, and then I'm hoping we can share. I have one more follow-on question. Sometimes it helps to think about what might get in our way and then how we could most successfully be helped around that or over that obstacle. And just really appreciate your engagement and hope you're leaving with something valuable, and hopefully you got at least something close to what you were hoping to get by attending today. So thanks, everyone.